Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the sources, connect the dots, and really try to pull out the insights that matter, the ones that help you get genuinely well-informed.
Glad to be diving in.
So today we're tackling a topic that feels familiar, almost simple on the surface, your 20s. But underneath that, there's a really fascinating and maybe even surprising truth about how pivotal these years really are.
Yeah, it's a time that, often gets casually dismissed in our culture. It's romanticized as like the time for finding yourself, maybe wandering, or even just taking time off.
Right. You hear that phrase all the time. 30 is the new 20.
Exactly. It gets thrown around so much, almost suggesting these years are, well, disposable, like a dress rehearsal before real adulthood kicks in.
But what if that whole narrative is actually profoundly misleading? Maybe even dangerously so.
That's precisely the idea we really need to challenge today head on, because contrary to that popular belief, the research is showing the 20s are, in fact, the most defining decade of our entire adult lives.
And that's not just a feeling, right? Not just a hunch. There's actual research.
Oh, absolutely. There's compelling evidence, a pretty unique study, actually, from Boston University and the University of Michigan. They meticulously looked at the life stories of successful people, focusing specifically on what they termed autobiographically consequential experiences.
Okay, autobiographically consequential experiences. Yep. Break that down a bit.
Think of them as the real pivot points in your life. The watershed moments, those experiences that genuinely shifted your path, fundamentally shaped who you became.
So not just random memories, but the big ones.
Exactly, foundational building blocks. And what this study found was really striking. These experiences, the ones with the strongest, most significant influence on how a life unfolds, they were overwhelmingly concentrated during the 20-something years.
Wow. Okay. That's a powerful finding.
It really is.
And it seems to connect with broader ideas in developmental psychology, too. You mentioned Noam Chomsky, his concept of a critical period.
Yeah.
How does that fit in here?
Yeah, it fits surprisingly well. Chomsky suggested that certain abilities like language acquisition in kids or, perhaps core adult capacities in this context, they tend to emerge and mature suddenly during a specific limited time frame.
Right. A window of opportunity.
Exactly. And it happens with the right kind of external stimulation. The crucial part, though, is that before or after this specific window, it becomes significantly harder, maybe even impossible sometimes, to achieve that same level of development or mastery. So what we're seeing in the life story research suggests the 20s function very much like this kind of critical period for many aspects of adult identity, career formation, even relationship building. It's really the time when our potential for major life trajectory changes is, well, at its absolute peak.
Okay. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear then, and maybe even urgent. We need to unpack the critical importance of these years, which often goes unacknowledged. We'll be drawing from, clinical psychology, solid sociological research, and also some really compelling personal stories from people actually navigating this time.
And the goal ultimately is to arm you, our listener, with the insights, the tools really, to make the absolute most of this pivotal decade.
We want you to feel informed, yeah, but also empowered to actively shape your future rather than just kind of letting it drift by.
And to help guide this exploration, we'll focus on 3 core pillars that really come into sharp focus during the 20s: work, love, and also understanding the really profound development happening within your brain and body.
Work, love, brain, and body. Got it.
Because the choices you make now in these areas, they aren't just for today. They have these profound, lasting, often compounding impacts that shape not just your 30s, but, well, the rest of your life.
Okay, let's get going then. This isn't just theory, is it? It's about understanding the real time of your life.
Exactly.
All right, let's dive right into this myth, this pervasive cultural idea about the 20s. We've all kind of absorbed it, haven't we? This idea that it's just extended adolescence, time for endless exploration.
Yeah, society has, maybe unintentionally, really trivialized these years. You see all these nicknames, right? Twixters, kidults, pre-adults.
And the Odyssey years. That one sounds kind of romantic, but maybe misleading.
Definitely misleading. They all basically suggest it's a time for, aimless wandering, for not really settling down or making serious commitments yet.
But what's really concerning, you're saying, is how contradictory this is.
It's deeply contradictory and potentially quite dangerous for young adults. Because on one hand, they're told implicitly, your 20s don't really matter foundationally. It's okay to just drift.
Right. Find yourself.
Exactly. But then, simultaneously, popular culture absolutely fetishizes this exact age. You've got child stars acting 20, older adults getting surgery to look perpetually 29.
It creates this weird psychological trap, doesn't it? Like collapsing the entire adult lifespan into one long, indeterminate 20-something phase.
Precisely. There's even a term for it now, amortality. This idea of living the same way, same pitch, from your teens until you die, as if time isn't really a factor.
Immortality. Wow. And that's where these really transformative years can just get squandered.
Totally. It's an insidious belief because if you genuinely think you have endless time stretching out, why would you bother making the hard choices now?
Why commit if you can just put it off indefinitely?
Exactly. And if you look back historically, the context is so starkly different. Think about our parents' generation, maybe Kate's parents from the book.
Right.
When they were in their 20s, the average 21-year-old was likely married, maybe already had a baby. Education often ended with high school or college. Then the focus shifted immediately to building a household, starting a family.
And economically different, too. One income could often support a family. Careers felt more stable, often lifelong.
Absolutely. The median home price was, what, $17,000? Divorce, effective birth control, just starting to become mainstream.
And now, fast forward just one generation, and it's this enormous cultural and economic shift.
Massive. User-friendly birth control changed everything. Women flooded the workplace. Marriage and kids happened much later.
Yeah, by the new millennium, only about half of 20-somethings were married by 30. Even fewer had kids by then.
Which opened up this period of, newfound freedom and choice. Lots of talk about time off, even as things like grad school became more necessary, adding more years to education.
So, beyond the cultural stories, what are the actual economic realities facing young adults today? Because it sounds challenging.
The data paints a pretty tough picture, yeah. Despite being the most educated generation ever, a smaller percentage actually find full-time work right after college.
Why is that?
Well, many traditional entry-level jobs, they've gone overseas, so it's just harder to get that first foothold in the job market here. Unemployment rates for this age group stay stubbornly high. Many are working part-time or, and this is a big one, in unpaid internships.
Right, the new starter job.
Yeah.
Often without pay or benefits.
Exactly. And even for those with paying jobs, when you adjust for inflation, earnings are actually lower than what their counterparts made back in the 1970s.
That's staggering. And it's not just getting the job, it's stability, right?
Stability is often elusive. The average 20-something cycles through like a handful of jobs just in their 20s.
Wow.
Plus, they're highly mobile. A third of them move residences in any given year. So lives and resumes can look kind of scattered, maybe lacking clear direction.
And then you add the student debt crisis on top of all that.
Oh, yeah. The number owing over $40,000 has jumped tenfold in the last decade. It forces so many back home with parents, delaying those traditional markers of independence even further.
It really paints a picture of intense instability, uncertainty.
It absolutely does. And this combination, the contradictory cultural message of endless time, plus these huge economic hurdles, it sets 20-somethings up for what some psychologists call another bubble ready to burst.
A bubble? How so?
Well, there's this pervasive belief, psychologists call it unrealistic optimism, that things will just magically work out.
The it'll all be fine mentality.
Exactly. The comforting but ultimately unhelpful idea that nothing really bad will ever happen to you personally.
I can imagine that leads to some real frustration later on. I've heard stories from clients feeling, horribly deceived.
Oh, definitely. Deceived by this idea that the 20s would just naturally be the best years of their lives. They come into therapy feeling adrift, behind.
Saying some really unsettling things sometimes.
They do. And that old saying, hope is a good breakfast but a bad supper. It really applies here. Optimism is great to start the day, but it's not enough on its own.
You need intentional action.
Yeah.
Otherwise, regret later.
Profound regret, often. What's really poignant, maybe even heart-wrenching, are those sessions with people in their 30s, their 40s, looking back, wishing desperately they'd done things differently in their 20s.
What kind of regrets?
True heartache is how some describe it. Over unfulfilled dreams for family, for career. Maybe facing fertility struggles later than expected, or realizing they'll be nearly 60 when their kids go to college.
Or 70 when their kids get married. That's a huge gap.
It's a profound sense of having missed crucial windows. Deep regret for time they just can't get back.
So the bottom line for you, our listener, is that building the life you really want, It doesn't just happen automatically with age or with optimism.
No. It takes, as Kate put it in the book, intentionality, active engagement, and crucially, some really good, solid information.
Which is what we're aiming for here. Okay, let's transition, though. Let's talk about that first core pillar, work, and specifically how you build something called identity capital.
Right, because adults don't just emerge fully formed, do they? We're actually made, often through these investments we make in ourselves.
Identity capital. Explain that concept.
Think of it as your personal collection of assets, the repertoire of individual resources you gather over time. It's the investments we make in ourselves, the things we do well enough or long enough that they become part of who we are.
So it's more than just the resume stuff, like degrees, job titles, test scores.
That's part of it, absolutely. That's your resume-based capital. But identity capital is broader, more personal. It includes things like how well you speak, your unique background, how you solve problems, your resilience, even how you look and carry yourself.
It's how we build ourselves bit by bit.
Exactly. And critically, it's not just abstract. Identity capital is the actual currency we use to, metaphorically speaking, purchase the jobs, the relationships, the other things we want in the adult world.
Okay, that makes sense. It's the currency.
Yeah. And this is where many 20-somethings can stumble. Like a client named Helen, she came in feeling like she was having an identity crisis.
Which many people feel is what the 20s are for.
Right. She thought the crisis was the main event for now, and building capital was for later. She was waiting for this lightning bolt of intuition to tell her what to do.
Just navel-gazing, basically.
Pretty much. Seeing that as what she was supposed to be doing. But, Erik Erikson, the developmental psychologist, warned against spending too much time in what he called disengaged confusion. Because lives that are all crisis and no capital can be just as stuck and unproductive as lives that are all capital and no crisis. You need both exploration and building.
That makes sense. It reminds me of the author's Outward Bound story.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
What seemed like just, a stint in the woods turned out to be incredibly valuable identity capital later on.
Yeah.
Especially in grad school interviews.
People were fascinated by it, weren't they? Running from bears, swimming with gators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't until she got her doctorate that she started being known for something else. It shows how these unconventional experiences can build really unique capital, often in ways you don't expect.
And that's so relevant today. With underemployment being such a common reality, the advice here is pretty practical. Take the job that offers the most capital, even if it's not the dream job right away or doesn't pay the most initially.
Like Helen choosing the animation studio floater job over the coffee shop.
Exactly. The coffee shop might have paid a bit more upfront, but the animation studio, that offered way more identity capital, industry access, new skills, connections.
And what she realized later is so telling. She said, "Not one person has asked for my GPA, and no one cares if you did the wrong major."
Right. It underscores that what ultimately matters is the transferable capital you build through experience, not just the labels.
And her point about new jobs emerging.
Yeah, jobs like marine biologist at an aquarium, epidemiologist, cinematographer. Many of these didn't really exist as clear paths when those people were undergrads. The landscape is constantly changing.
Which means adaptability. And having that diverse identity capital is key. More so than sticking rigidly to some predefined path.
Absolutely. Which brings us to another crucial piece of building capital, especially in this job market. Understanding and using the strength of weak ties.
Okay, weak ties. This concept is fascinating and kind of counterintuitive.
It really is. Sociologist Mark Granovetter's idea is that not all relationships are equal when it comes to finding opportunities. Your strong ties, your close friends, your inner circle, your urban tribe.
They give comfort, support.
Immense comfort, yeah. But here's the catch. They often offer limited new information or opportunities because your contacts and knowledge bases mostly overlap. You're all swimming in the same info pool, basically.
Oh, makes sense.
Weak ties, on the other hand, these are the people you know but not intimately. A former colleague, an old professor, an acquaintance from a club, someone you met briefly somewhere.
Why are they so powerful?
Because they offer access to completely fresh perspectives, new information, often unexpected opportunities that just wouldn't circulate within your close-knit group. They're like bridges you cannot see all the way across.
So you don't know where they might lead.
Exactly. Information, especially about jobs, tends to spread farther and faster through these weak ties because they connect you to different networks.
Like the author getting her book deal.
Perfect example. It came from a casual email exchange with an editor she barely knew, not a close friend. A classic weak tie leading to a huge opportunity.
It shows you don't always need deep connections for breakthroughs.
Not at all. And look at Cole's story. He was stuck in this dead-end job, feeling trapped. His urban tribe, his close friends were supportive emotionally, but they kind of reinforced his inaction, focusing on how bad the job market was.
Shared misery, almost.
A bit, yeah. Same, limited info. But then, a weak tie, a high school friend he hadn't seen in years, working at a startup, put in a good word.
And that changed everything.
Radically altered his career path, led to a challenging tech job. Years later, he's a successful CIO, and he and his wife fully credit that initial, seemingly small connection from a weak tie.
So the takeaway for listeners is, networking isn't this scary transactional thing.
Not at all. It's about strategically, authentically cultivating these weaker connections, too. Explore alumni networks, LinkedIn groups, maybe do informational interviews.
Because many jobs, especially good ones, come through connections.
The data shows that clearly. Referrals matter. It's about putting yourself out there, even if it feels a bit awkward at first. The potential payoff is just too big to ignore.
Okay, so we build identity capital, we leverage weak ties. But why do so many 20-somethings still feel so paralyzed? That feeling of being in the ocean, overwhelmed by choice.
It's a really common feeling, and that cultural myth of endless possibilities contributes to it. When Ian felt like he was in the ocean, his parents just said, "You're the best, sky's the limit," which sounds encouraging.
But actually made it worse.
Paradoxically, yes. Led to more confusion, not courage. Because it reinforces this illusion of infinite choice.
Like thinking you're choosing from 24 ice cream flavors, when really, based on your own history and inclinations, it's more like your personal 6-flavor table.
Exactly. You've already spent 2 decades shaping who you are, making micro-choices, developing preferences. Your real, authentic options are already much narrower than infinity. That illusion of endless choice is paralyzing.
So why do we resist acknowledging what we actually want? Especially when it might be right there.
That leads to Christopher Bollas' idea of unthought knowns. These are truths we kind of know about ourselves deep down, but we suppress them, forget them, maybe fear acknowledging them.
Like Ian, with his childhood love of drawing, Legos, digital art.
Right, he had this clear affinity for tech, perception, design. He could talk easily about creating products, but he pushed it all down.
Why?
Fear. Fear of not being unique enough or prestigious. He convinced himself he was destined for some boring office job, ignoring his actual interests.
Which ties into Karen Horney's concept, the tyranny of the should.
Yes. These external judgments, often internalized from society, peers, social media, that masquerade as super high standards.
Like my work should be wow, or my life should look perfect on Facebook.
Exactly. And it's paralyzing. Talia's story, having a nervous breakdown, trying to get an A in her 20s because her real life didn't match the curated online versions. That's the tyranny of the should in action. It leads to this desperate search for glory, not authentic potential.
So the shift needs to be from defining yourself by what you're not,
to embracing what you are, a positive identity. It takes real courage, especially in your 20s, to actually claim something, to say, this is what I'm interested in, and then, crucially, to start.
Rather than endlessly exploring and ending up with a blank resume later.
Precisely. Being against things is easy. What are you for? What are you actively trying to build?
And part of that is crafting your story.
Right.
For interviews.
Absolutely critical. Your resume at this stage is often still, fledgling. It doesn't tell a full story yet. So your personal narrative, how you articulate your journey, is hugely important.
Doesn't have to be perfectly linear.
No, not at all. But it needs to make sense to interviewers. You need to move beyond maybe a postmodern essay, too abstract or confusing, to something coherent, smart, with a clear narrative arc showing your progression and potential.
Because companies want originality, but they really want clarity and logic even more.
Definitely. Interviewers get that you don't have it all figured out. They just want a reasonable, authentic story about your past, your present interests, and why this job makes sense for you now. It's about connecting the dots for them and for yourself.
That clarity sounds empowering in itself.
It really is. It helps you articulate your value.
Okay, moving from the world of work. Let's shift to our second pillar, love. And the stakes here feel incredibly high. David Brooks said, choosing who you marry is maybe the most important decision you make.
It's arguably right up there, yeah. And yet the irony is, for a decision this monumental, there's almost no formal training, no structured guidance on how to choose well.
It's a huge paradox. You compared career building to blackjack You see
Yeah.
cards, revise, adjust strategy.
Right. Lots of adjustments possible. But choosing a mate, that's more like walking over to the roulette wheel, putting all your chips on red 32.
One big bet.
One massive high-stakes decision that affects everything: money, work, lifestyle, family, health, retirement, even how you die. It all gets intertwined with your partner's life.
And unlike a bad job, you can't just leave a marriage off your resume.
Not easily. It often creates these lifelong financial, emotional, logistical ties, especially if there are kids involved.
That Mills longitudinal study you mentioned, following women for decades.
Yeah, it revealed a really sobering truth. Many of the saddest, most difficult life stories at midlife were directly linked back to bad marriages. It's not just minor stuff. It's profound, lasting consequences.
So given how important this is, why are today's 20-somethings marrying later? Average age 26 for women, 28 for men. Does waiting longer guarantee a better marriage?
That's the common belief, influenced by the cultural narrative. But the research is actually counterintuitive here. Marrying later than your teens definitely protects against divorce, but only up to about age 25.
Only until 25.
Yeah. After that, statistically, age at marriage doesn't really predict divorce rates anymore. It challenges that idea that later is always inherently better.
And this often leads to that phenomena, the age 30 bait and switch.
Exactly. Everything felt fine at 29, casual dating, no big commitments, future wide open. Then boom, 30 hits, and suddenly it feels awful, urgent, deeply unsatisfying.
Commitment shifts from later to yesterday.
Instantly, it creates huge pressure, confusion, especially for women thinking about fertility. You hear these poignant internal worries from clients, fearing being left without a chair when friends pair off, feeling stigma around actually planning for marriage and kids.
That client quote is chilling. Sometimes I think I married my husband just because he was the closest chair to me at 30.
It highlights the real danger of just drifting into relationships without intention. We really need to challenge that romantic ideal of just passively waiting for a soulmate to appear.
Instead, it's about consciously picking your family.
Yes, it's a serious, intentional decision about who you partner with for life, acknowledging that the choices you make now fundamentally shape your future happiness. It's about agency.
Like Emma's story, feeling isolated in an inadequate relationship.
Right, and through therapy, she developed this clear ambition for her family. She visualized a caring husband, involved in-laws, the structure she craved.
And that vision gave her the courage to end the relationship that didn't fit, even though it was scary.
Incredibly courageous. And it highlights how Western individualism, while valuing freedom, can make us forget this huge 20-something opportunity. Actively picking and creating her families.
And she eventually found that.
She did. She intentionally built the family connection she desired, marrying someone who gave her that second chance at family. It shows the power of intention over just waiting.
Okay, another big trend affecting relationships is cohabitation. It's increased massively, right?
Yeah.
Like 1,500% in 50 years.
Staggering increase. And often it starts as cohabitation as prophylaxis, testing the waters before committing.
But it often turns into sliding, not deciding.
That's the term, yeah. Couples move in more out of convenience, maybe shared rent, or just because it feels like the next step, rather than from a clear mutual commitment to a future together.
And that can lead to lock-in.
Exactly. Behavioral economists talk about this. You make initial investments, shared rent, pets, furniture, setting up a life together. Those are setup costs.
Right.
But then there are also switching costs, the emotional pain, the time, the money, the sheer hassle of breaking up and untangling two lives.
Which makes it harder to leave, even if it's not really working.
Increasingly difficult. Jennifer's description of being caught in quicksand, feeling stuck in this endless audition to be his wife, is so vivid.
And there's that specific finding, the pre-engagement cohabitation effect. What's that?
This is really crucial and often missed. Research consistently shows couples who live together before getting engaged are significantly more likely to have distressed marriages or eventually divorce compared to those who move in after a clear engagement.
So it's not cohabitation itself that's the problem.
It seems to be more about the timing and the intent. Was it a conscious decision based on mutual commitment, or was it sliding due to convenience or inertia? That seems to make the difference.
So for listeners, how can they navigate this? Avoid just sliding.
Researchers suggest getting crystal clear on commitment levels before moving in, have those explicit conversations about expectations, future plans.
And anticipate the lock-in.
Yeah, be aware of those constraints, financial, logistical, emotional, that might make leaving harder later if things aren't right. And remember, there are other ways to test a relationship beyond just dating and sex. Like seeing how you handle stress together. manage money disputes, compromise on big decisions, navigate family interactions, travel under pressure. It's about seeing if you're truly compatible, if you're genuinely in like, not just in love.
In like. That's an interesting distinction. Let's talk about Kathy's story now. She used her 20s as a dress rehearsal for dating.
Tragically, yes. She deliberately dated down, getting involved with almost anyone who showed interest, sometimes engaging in risky behavior just to feel wanted.
And she rationalized it as just practice.
Yeah, the 20s are a dress reversal, but underneath there was clearly a lot of pain.
This connects to that idea of self-cure, right?
Exactly. Temporary coping mechanisms like Kathy using casual sex or music that initially provide relief or distraction make you feel less alone.
But eventually, they can actually make you feel more alone.
Yeah.
Or get in the way.
Paradoxically, yes, like that proverb, a raft is good for crossing a river, but when you get to the other side, put it down. The things that helped you survive one phase can become burdens later.
And Kathy also had these untold personal stories driving her behavior, often rooted in shame.
Yes, stories looping silently in her mind, shaping her identity, often stemming from feeling unnoticed or disliked in high school. These narratives can be incredibly powerful and persistent.
But the hopeful part is, these stories can be edited, revised.
Absolutely. Like editing a novella. Kathy's transformation was amazing. She realized she wasn't inherently behind or unwanted. She shifted her whole mindset from passively being wanted to actively wanting in her relationships, taking charge.
That takes incredible courage to rewrite your own internal script like that.
It really does, and it brings us back to the importance of compatibility, of being in like, because personality really matters for long-term happiness.
Eli's story illustrates that well, doesn't it?
Perfectly. His relationship looked great on the surface, attractive, same religion, politics, friends, good sex, all the surface stuff checked out.
But the trip to Nicaragua revealed deeper clashes.
Completely unraveled things. It exposed fundamental personality differences, his need for spontaneity versus her rigid need for routine and control, things they couldn't just ignore anymore.
This is where the big 5 personality traits come in handy. Openness, conscientiousness.
Extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Yes, it's a useful framework. While personality similarity might be less obvious initially than shared hobbies, research shows it strongly influences relationship satisfaction, especially for young couples.
And one trait is particularly predictive of problems.
Neuroticism, that tendency towards anxiety, stress, criticism, moodiness, emotional reactivity. High levels of neuroticism are a major predictor of relationship unhappiness and eventual breakdown, even more so than just personality differences themselves.
Courtney's story really drives this home. She was so critical of her fiancé, Matt.
Constantly seeing their differences as his flaws. He doesn't remember lilies, he doesn't read the newspaper, magnifying tiny things.
But her knee injury shifted her perspective.
Dramatically. During her long, difficult recovery, Matt's unwavering support, his patience, it forced her to confront her own neuroticism. She realized he was doing everything right, supporting her completely, while she was the one constantly finding fault, projecting her anxiety.
Wow. So her personality was the bigger challenge.
She recognized it was. It's a powerful reminder that differences can be strengths, and what a relationship needs to thrive changes over time. It's not static.
Okay, this flows perfectly into our third and final pillar, the brain and body. How activating your potential here in your 20s has these huge lasting effects. Let's start with forward thinking.
Right. We know the frontal lobe, the brain's CEO, basically, responsible for planning, judgment, decision-making, impulse control. It's the last part to fully mature. Development continues right through the 20s, even into the early 30s.
So does that mean we should just wait? Postpone big decisions until our brains are fully cooked?
Absolutely not. That's a total misinterpretation. Forward thinking doesn't just magically appear with age. It comes from practice, from experience.
Which explains why some 22-year-olds seem way more put together than some 34-year-olds.
Exactly. The brain works on that use it or lose it principle. There's this rapid overproduction of neurons early on. Then pruning happens, unused connections get eliminated. What you actively practice and focus on in your 20s literally shapes the structure and efficiency of your adult brain.
So, if you want to be a forward-thinking adult, you need to start practicing it now.
You got it. And part of that is learning to calm yourself, mastering emotional regulation.
Because the 20s are intense emotionally, right? Those flashbulb memories.
incredibly vivid memories, both amazing highs, dream job, great first date, and really painful lows, the embarrassing email, waiting for test results, the text breakup. They hit hard. And 20-somethings, partly due to that still developing frontal lobe, often take criticism or negative stuff really personally. Leads to more anxiety, anger. Definitely. William James, the psychologist, had great wisdom here. The art of being wise is knowing what to overlook. Older adults tend to develop a positivity effect, more interest in positive info, less reactivity to negative stuff. They learn to disengage strategically from conflict.
Like the author's onion chopping supervisor story. That was intense.
Oh, yeah. Discussing clients passionately while the supervisor just chops onions for an hour, never looks up, just says, "Time's up."
And the author ends up in tears, partly onions, but mostly feeling dismissed.
Right. It was this visceral reminder of how our own interpretation or attachment to an interaction can massively amplify distress. The importance of learning to disengage sometimes, not internalize everything.
Okay, moving to getting along and getting ahead. This connects to commitment.
And to Erickson's 10,000 hours rule, the idea that expertise comes from sustained practice, not just being a natural. Naturals are mostly myths.
So how does that relate to personality?
Well, positive personality changes in the 20s, becoming more emotionally stable, conscientious, socially competent, agreeable, confident. These don't just happen. They come largely from getting along and getting ahead, from actively investing in adulthood through choices and effort.
Sam's story is a great example here. From fun employed and anxious.
To making just one small commitment, getting an apartment and a dog. That provided rhythm, meaning...
Which then snowballed into starting his dog daycare business.
Exactly. Dog days. That commitment fostered huge personality maturation, gave him structure, success he hadn't planned on. He built his life one commitment at a time.
So commitment isn't just about work, but relationships too, even if they don't last forever.
Absolutely. Active commitments, whether to work or stable relationships, they significantly reduce social anxiety and depression. They provide constant opportunities to practice those crucial interpersonal skills.
And the research backs this up. Less commitment equals more dissatisfaction.
Compellingly, one study found 80% of 20-somethings who avoided commitments were unhappy with their dating lives, and men who stayed single and uncommitted through their 20s. They saw a noticeable dip in self-esteem nearing 30. Commitment seems key to psychological growth.
Okay, now for maybe the most sensitive topic. The biological clock and how we perceive time, often quite differently from reality.
It's crucial, though often deliberately ignored. Interestingly, while career is a priority for about 15% of 20-somethings, being a good parent, 52%, and having a successful marriage, 30%, rank much higher as life goals.
But there's a disconnect with the biology.
A major disconnect. The biological clock isn't just for women, by the way. Older paternal age is linked to risks for kids, too. But for women, the timeline is more pronounced. Fertility peaks in the late 20s, declines noticeably at 30, and really plunges around 40.
Due to egg quantity and quality declining.
And less effective endocrine systems, yeah.
It's biology. But we tend to ignore the stats, right, because of the availability heuristic. We remember the celebrity mom who had a baby at 45.
Exactly. We recall the exceptions and forget the general rule, the statistics. But the numbers are stark. For cycle pregnancy odds drop sharply after 35, maybe 5% at 40, 3% at 41. Miscarriage rates climb significantly, too.
Caitlin's story is heartbreaking. Delaying for the big wedding a couple of years together.
Only to face years of grueling, failed fertility treatments and ultimately profound grief. It's a reality many face when they delay too long based on cultural timelines rather than biological ones.
And later childbearing stresses marriages, too. Honeymoon sex becomes a calendar-driven quest.
It can, tragically. The anxiety, the financial strain of treatments, then juggling demanding careers in your late 30s, 40s with raising young kids. It's immense pressure.
Plus that poignant generational gap, less time with grandparents.
It's a real loss for many families, yeah.
And it's not just fertility, it's our whole perception of time. That illusion of infinite time.
Right. Michelle Sifry's cave experiment showed how our brains condense unmarked time, that where did the time go feeling. This present bias is strong in your 20s. The future feels distant, abstract.
Which leads to inaction, like that cynical store clerk who saw nothing between 28 and 85.
That chilling disconnect from his future self, yeah. But the reality is 20-somethings who just drift, living beyond time, they usually aren't happy. They lose purpose, like Sifry in the cave.
But Rachel's story shows the power of making time concrete. The timeline exercise.
Huge impact. mapping out goals, timelines. It made the future feel real, urgent. It propelled her into law school, into career steps she's now thrilled about. She shifted from drifting to intentional action.
So bringing it all home
Yeah.
really comes back to intentionality.
Absolutely. Like John Irving starting his novels with the last sentence and working backward. Most 20-somethings can't write their life's final sentence yet, obviously.
But they can identify things they want or definitely don't want in their 30s, 40s, 60s.
Exactly. And from that clearer vision, you can work backward today. Guide your actions now. That's how you build a life with purpose, how you live in real time.
So the big message, the 20s aren't a throwaway decade, not a dress rehearsal.
Unequivocally not. They're a crucible. A profoundly transformative time for forging adult identity, career, relationships. It's real time, packed with unique developmental chances, and needs to be lived that way with action, not just hope.
Okay, so key takeaways for you, our listener. 1, build identity capital, use all your experiences.
2, cultivate weak ties, they're bridges to new opportunities.
3, make intentional choices and love decide, don't just slide.
4, understand your brain develops through action and commitment, start now.
And 5, do the math on time and fertility, acknowledge the realities, even if uncomfortable.
It can feel scary, yeah. That realization my life is up to me.
But that's the catalyst, isn't it? The moment you stop waiting and start writing your own story.
It is. And Billy's regret during his MRI is such a haunting lesson. Realizing his squandered 20s meant losing future time with his son, his wife.
He wasn't scared of losing the past, but the future he traded away.
Exactly. Trading youthful partying for years he could have had, memories he could have made if he'd just been more intentional sooner.
So, the final thought for you to ponder.
Yeah.
What does your happy ending look like? Not just at 30, but 50, 70, 90.
And what intentional steps, however small, can you take today to start writing that story?
Because, as Scott Adams said, the best part about getting older is knowing how your life worked out, implying it's an outcome you helped create, especially in this defining decade.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep diving deep.
And keep writing your own story with purpose.